What's good, y'all? Another episode of Keys and Rails coming in. Shout outs to my man Will Spady, my good friend Will Spady, giving me this topic to talk about. And it goes like this: tanking. Tanking. So what's in sports? Why do people like it? Why do people don't like it? Let's first start off by talking about tanking. As it hits close to home because my Sixers, they tanked for a good amount of years in order to get draft picks and stars. So the difference, so let me rephrase this. So if you think about the tanking that the Sixers did, what did the tanking get you? Got you Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. 2 stars, right? So tanking does work if it's done correctly. Tanking just to tank and get players, like to take players that are not really, that you don't see them being stars. Well, it kind of is at fault to the staffing of your scouting. So you can do all that and tank and then get draft picks that actually don't pan out. And typically that's kind of what happens. Teams are typically bad. They continuously be bad, and they're at the front of the draft and they don't draft well. If they drafted well and they hit, they wouldn't be at the bottom of the draft. So in football, I don't get it. Football, I don't really get it. Because in football, typically, even at the top of the draft, they might not pan out. I mean, there's a good chance that, there's not a lot of generational talents that come every single draft. Well, we know that. And so take, for instance, in the NFL this year, right? To get a better draft pick, teams would lose to get a better draft pick. Take, for instance, the Eagles. So that last game in Washington, they lost, got them the 6th pick, which they then traded back to get the 12th pick, only to move up to get the 10th pick. And they got a first round pick out of that. Great, right? The player at 6, there was a significant drop off from 6, from 5 between 5 and 12. So you had your top tier, and then after 5, after Chase was picked, you could probably pick anybody in any spot, and it'll be a good fit for anybody. So Patrick Surtain was there, J.C. Horn was there, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Penny Sewell, guys like that. So these are real quality guys that didn't matter where you were, you could still get them. Even if you had to move up, you didn't have to give a first-round pick to move up. Not like what the Bears did to move up to take Justin Fields. So Justin Fields was still there after 10. So in the NFL, I think that it's really up to your scouts to kind of define that. But with tanking in the NFL, you really don't have to. There's guys that can fall in your lap, and if you draft well, you can still get up to becoming a playoff team and doing it that way and fixing things in free agency. So now let me transition to the NBA. NBA is it's too much. It's way harder than people think, right? You almost have to tank, especially for small market teams, to get a star, right? I don't consider the Sixers to be a small market team. They're a big market team. I don't know why it's not a destination, but free agent destinations I can name you it's about 2 or 3. The Clippers, the Lakers, the Clippers recently. So let me X them out. So the Lakers and probably the Heat. And the Heat kind of, I mean, because of the lifestyle, but there are big market teams that are not free agent destinations, like the Knicks. Who wanted to go to the Knicks? Who wanted to go to Brooklyn until KD and Kyrie went there? So who wanted to go to the Clippers until Chris Paul and all those guys got there? So you got to look at that. LA has always been a free agent destination. The Lakers just have that kind of prestige in the league. So if you're not Los Angeles Lakers, you really can't get good that quick because you're not going to get a star, right? So tanking helps with that, especially with small market teams. So take, for instance, Zion, right? Zion got there because the Pelicans had to move their star to the Lakers in order to do that. Because here's what happens, guys. Stars don't stay, especially in small market teams. So after your first contract and you're a small market team, they're leaving. I mean, it's almost crazy to think that a star that was drafted by that team stays. They almost always leave. They almost always leave after their first contract, gone, because they want to go where they want to go. So for small market teams, it's very, very hard for them to continue to build a franchise when after 4 years, if they got a star, they end up leaving, or they have to move hell and earth just to keep them to stay. So take, for instance, the Indiana Pacers, right? They had Paul George. He turned out to be a star, right? Couldn't keep him. I mean, it's just, and then what you're going to run into is you'll get good return back for them if you trade them. Not if you let them leave in free agency, if you trade them. But if you get something back for them, they're not going to be that star type person, right? So you're going to be running the wheel of mediocrity forever until you get a star. It's almost a never-ending wheel, ever. If the Sixers never tanked, well, openly tank, how about that? They openly tank. There's a lot of teams that tanked that didn't say it, but they did it. That openly tanked, they would have never got who they got now. Like, we would have been stuck with a great player, Drew Holiday, which I'm not saying that's bad. Andre Iguodala's, those type guys. So we'd have been a 41 team, not 50 or 60 at all without a star. We would have been fighting the KDs. We would have been. It's just a constant fight with everybody. So Golden State didn't tank. They were just bad, and they just hit on their picks. So they hit on Draymond, they hit on Steph, they hit on Clay, right? The Sixers hit on Simmons, and they hit on Embiid. Rarely do you see a lot of teams built in free agency in the NBA. You got to draft. And people will say that in the NFL too, but it's easier to fix holes in free agency, especially if you have cap. If you have cap numbers, you can, finagle to do whatever you need to do. If you're cap strapped, especially in basketball, you have to count on your draft. So the only way to count on your draft and then to get up into the supreme talent, which would be the first 3-4 players, you got to be bad. It's almost, you have to be bad. Do I blame people for tanking? No, not in the NBA. Because I actually understand it. I understand that there is almost no way you can get a star to come to your facility and play for you if you don't draft them. Right? There's so many other factors that go into this. So the summer when LeBron was a free agent, right? The Sixers were at the bottom of the list. But basketball-wise, look at what he would have played with if he would have signed with the Sixers. It would have been him, Joel, and Ben. Who's stopping that team? Who? Y'all tell me who. To this day, we'd have had championship after championship after championship, right? He chose to go to LA, another free agent destination. Great. He went out there and he ended up winning a championship. Great. He would have won a championship pretty much wherever he would have went. But if you think about it, he wouldn't have had to press as much to do as much if he would have came here. But that's his choice. That was his decision. That's just the way it goes. But he wouldn't have won the chip without Davis, and he went and got Davis. So you got to look at it like this: like you can't win in a league in the NBA without with less. You can't win in a league with less than 2 stars. It's just not going to happen. So tanking to me is just kind of like you're ensuring a chance for your franchise to get a franchise player. There's not a lot of parity in the league. I mean, it's close now, but you don't like there'll be it's more chances of players leaving their first destination that they were drafted than not. I understand it. That's just the way it is. Everybody's built differently. Players are built differently than back in the day. Back in the day, pretty much the team that drafted you is the team you stayed with. You wanted to compete and battle with everybody else. But now it's kind of like it's a different league. So there's no way you can go be in the teens for drafting 18, 19 position in the draft and be able to get a start. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have to either move up to get somebody, and that's mortgaging a lot of your draft capital to get somebody, and trading for somebody. You're going to have to mortgage a lot with that as well. You're mortgaging your core. You're mortgaging your core to actually build around. So tanking for the NBA, I get it. For the NFL, I don't. Because you can. I think it's easier to find talent in football because you have 7 rounds to get somebody. Basketball, you only have 2. I mean, you do have undrafted free agents. You have things like that, diamonds in the rough, things like that. But because there's so many people in the NFL draft, you have a better chance of getting a star in the second, third round that have first round grades. It happens all the time. That chance is probably slim to none in the NBA. That's why I kind of get why teams do it. I know now that they're putting things in place, to make sure people don't tank. But for the small franchises, the Indianas, the Oklahoma Cities, places like that, like they lucked up. They had Kevin Durant, Westbrook, and Harden all at the same time. It didn't work out, but they struck on their draft, and it was because their team was bad. I get that. So, but because of that, in the lottery system, yes, you can say if you are a bad team, you can go from 10 to 3. It happens, but rarely is that going to happen. I mean, you're going to end up lucky, right? I mean, the Orlando Magic got back-to-back number 1 picks. That never happens. You only heard about that something like that never happens. They got Shaq the first year. They had just missed the playoffs, so they're in the lottery, and then they end up getting the number 1 pick again. Pure luck. Pure luck. But I mean, in basketball, it increases your chances to get somebody because the NBA is more of a destination place and not draft and groom. You don't see a lot of draft and groom things because after 4 years, most likely people will leave and they want their freedom. They want the free agency to go wherever they want. So shout out to Will for making me talk about this topic. I think it's a pretty good topic that we should all be talking about. But let me know your thoughts about tanking. Do y'all think that it's bad for the league, good for the league? What are your thoughts about it? Let me know. Leave y'all comments below. Talk to y'all soon. Thank y'all for tuning in for another episode of Keezy Reels. I'm out. Peace.